Today we're looking at a full loadout guide for the new Icebreaker event because it's not as simple as just bringing all your best gear. So straight away, one of the reasons why the Icebreaker loadout is not as simple as it seems at first glance is because there is really two parts to getting to this event, and that is the fact that you have to transit through shoreline first. You have to go down to the pier on a very exposed area and sit there for 15 seconds while you use the hovercraft to get over to the Icebreaker. Now the issue with this is that firstly there are going to be other people, and there has been a lot of talk of people camping on the pier and on various other places, quite a few rat spots that you can sit at and kill people while they are transiting. And the second part is that Sanitar can also be down there, so you do have to have a loadout that is going to allow you to get in, get through, kill Sanitar and some of his guards as well, and then also extract successfully from shoreline and transit over to the Icebreaker, where you then have to actually do that real proper map with 40 minutes with Black Division and everything else on there, which is kind of insane.
Russian spotted on 12.
Oh no. So this is where the first piece of our loadout comes from, and that is smoke grenades. Smoke grenades are really useful for Icebreaker, not just for the pier itself, because that obviously helps you to transit through without getting headshot by 338 Lapua from a million miles away, but it also helps on the Icebreaker itself for certain sections regarding bosses and blocking line of sight, because the bosses won't shoot you directly through the smoke. I know some people have said it's a little bit inconsistent, but I believe that that's broadly the idea. So the one that you want to take is the green smoke, which you can buy on the traders, and I'll show you that one right now. So these are the green smokes, the M18s. There's actually two places you can get them, either Jaeger or Peacekeeper, and they're really cheap. So you want to be throwing a ton of these onto your loadout. I think you probably want to take at least 4. I think I ended up taking about 6 because I chucked about 3 just to get out through the shoreline pier in the first place. But these are really cheap, so you may as well bring them. Now the next part that's a little bit awkward is that Icebreaker is CQB, so you want something with a short barrel with a high RPM so that you can hit a lot of headshots. But that doesn't really mesh with going through shoreline first, and so theoretically you can take a weapon that deals with both. I've been using one of these. We'll go through all the guns in a moment, but we'll look at the loadout first. So I've been using one of these, and this is an MCX. This has got 585 meter per second muzzle velocity. This does actually go up when you put CBJ in it, so we will talk about that, as I said. But you can, and I did toy around with this, bring something else as well, and then just chuck it off the pier for insurance fraud. So I actually think there's a strong case for an RFB. You can do whatever you want with it, to be honest. I tried to lean into it fully and went for one of the really high-powered scopes. You can use whichever of these mounts you like, but some of them are super cheap. So these ones, like the Mark IV LR, which is the Leopold one, or the 3x24 March Tactical, these can see into forever. And they're really useful if you're on the pier overlook and you can look down into pier and maybe you can kill Sanitar and some of his guards, or some PMCs who are down there as well. I typically left people alone because I want them to transit and not feel like they're going to have to, fight me first, because I don't want their gear. I just want to get through to the Icebreaker. But this at least allows you to scope out the joint, especially if you want to use a holographic on your main weapon, which is certainly a choice that you could make. So I think the RFB is kind of cool. Now, one thing that I think is useful to talk about before we look at any more weapons is about the rig, because one of the things that really dictates your overall loadout is what rig you have, because that dictates what pouches you've got. And I think that this armor is probably one of the best in the game just for overall flexibility. And this comes over on Prapor level 3. So if you go over to armors here, he has quite a few different ones these days. But this one here, the Medic EMR, is the one that I'm using. It's only 88k. It doesn't come with any plates, unfortunately, but it is armor class 3 as a base, and it has neck protection as well. I went through all of these when I did my armor guide, and in that, basically, although the movement speed is 5%, turn speed 3%, and ergo of 3%, it's a little high. There's not that much leeway between this and one of the really good ones. And because we're going to be playing in PvE for Icebreaker, I feel like you probably do want the neck protection and have the ability to have side plates as well, because you want the most protection that you can against rogues and Black Division. Most against rogues, to be honest, because the Black Division have super good ammo, which is going to pen through most of the things that you have, but often rogues will have kind of crappy ammo, and sometimes that may end up saving you. So I quite like this one, firstly just for the armor protection, and secondly because of the layout. This allows you to use a 2x2 magazine if you need. You can also use a 40 or 45 rounder if you need to as well. And then it's also got 2 regular slots for 30s or 60s for 545 or 556. So this is really handy, and that's the one that I'm using here. Inside of this, you're going to want to then obviously put some of your best plates in there. So the front plate that I'm using is this one, the GAC 4 Triple S2, which is a class 6. These were the ones that you were able to get on the Ram barter, but BSG have actually removed it, interestingly. In the back, I'm using one of these GAC 3 S15Ms. Feel free to use a class 6 plate of lower value if you want to. I could make a strong argument actually for moving over to something like a Granite BR5, because sometimes you do get shot in the back if you're running away. And then on the side plates, I've just stuck in these class 5 ones here because they're not as critical, but it can save you a little bit from some of the bullets from the AI. So we're going to use that, and then this gives us the ability, as I said, to use really any combination of magazines that we need, and we have a couple of slots here for our meds and some of our grenades as well. Alright, so as for weapons, logistically, the M4 is probably your best bet because Black Division drop lots of really good ammo, M855A1 and M995 for this particular caliber. However, I would say that the damage on this is a little low, but let's just run with it for a second. There's quite a few weapons that I recommend, but this one, the one thing that I think is super important here is to make sure that you are using this. I think the bad lever is more important here than anywhere else because you don't need crazy low recoil for fighting these guys because it's so close range most of the time. But this allows you to reload faster, and that might genuinely save your life against some of the AI when they push. So if you stick the bad lever on right at the beginning, this will then show you which receivers you're allowed to use, because you are going to give up some vertical recoil to use this particular piece, because you can only use like the Gen 3, for example, or the Model 1, which you can't really get access to unless you're actually using the Radiance Model 1 itself, because you're not allowed to use the MUR or the AX15. So normally I'm going to stick on the Gen 3 at this point. Now you can do whatever you like with the actual build itself. Typically, I would go with something like this, the BA Hansen 13.7, because that's nice and short. Put on the low pro gas block, and then whether you go suppressed or not, it's really up to you. It's probably worth having a little play around in the hideout just before you go into raid to decide whether you actually want to be suppressed or not. If you are going to go suppressed, I'd probably go for the ASR Seeker. I think that gives you best bang for buck, lower recoil, and not too much ergo dropped. For the stocks these days, you pretty much can just go ERE plus PRS Gen 3. This is kind of unusual, but you can make up the ergo elsewhere, and these are quite good bang for buck in terms of recoil itself. Pistol grips, normally I just go for the MOE AR-15 at this point, and the handguard, you can choose what you like. Doesn't really matter. The Mark 10 is fine, and we're going to put on the Mark 10 rail, and then on top of that probably an SI Cobra or something. So that gives you a decent base to start with. As I said, you can play around with this and add a few different bits and pieces here and there as you like. It doesn't really matter what you use, to be honest, because you're in such close quarters, and I think the bad lever probably makes more difference than anything else. The next gun that we're going to look at is the MCX. This is the one that I actually have here because this is the one that I have been using. So I've already got the build ready for this. Now, the UCS is pretty much the best stock for that, and I'm using a suppressor because there really aren't that many great unsuppressed options if you're using the short barrel. As you can see, the amount of muzzle brakes is just really small. If you do want to go and suppress properly, you can go up to the larger barrels, and that one then gives you some other options, but it's the 16 that really gives you the full plethora of options because this allows you to add on one of the brakes from the 7.62 caliber, which is this guy here, the red brake, 7.62 red, and this one has got a lot of recoil reduction on it, which is pretty neat, so you can use that. The rest of the gun is relatively straightforward. There's only two handguards that are kind of like best in slot for the MCX. It's more simple than the M4, and you've got this one, the M-Lock 12-inch, you've also got this MCX 12, but this one is a lot heavier than that, so typically this one is better. And then it's really just a case of vertical foregrip and sights and lasers and that kind of thing. So the MCX is relatively straightforward. The benefit here is that Black Division also drop 300 Blackout as well. They drop CBJ and they also drop 300 AP. And when you're using CBJ, the muzzle velocity on these weapons is actually quite a lot higher than it is normally, which is kind of nice, especially for the shoreline section. Again, you could pair it with another gun like the RFB if you want, but you could put an LPVO on this and just use it on its own without having to bring anything else into a raid right from the beginning. Let's just ping through the rest of the guns, the relative choices that you've got. One of them is the NL545. You can either choose the DI or the GP version. This one mods out like an HK, and this DI one mods out like an M4. They are expensive to begin with, but they are good, and it gives you an option for 545 if you've got a ton of that ammo. I know some people have just got mountains and mountains of BP, a Golnik, 7N40, that kind of thing. So this is a decent choice for that particular caliber, as I said, if you've got lots of spare ammo for it. Now, this mods out a lot like the M4. I'm not going to go through a full detailed build. It's relatively good to begin with, and the NL feels great to shoot right from the start. So you could just slap on a few bits and pieces and just go into raid with it. So you can see it's got 60 and 64 right out of the gate, and it uses all the same suppressors that the M4 does, which makes it nice and straightforward. Another option is the Mutant. We looked at the mutant relatively recently. This is decent because it has 650 RPM and is in 762x39, which goes a long way to help fight the AI. And we're going to talk in a second about the various health pools and which bullets you need to bring for each of these particular calibers, but this is helpful because the damage that you're going to inflict is much higher than on the smaller intermediate calibers. And this guy, you can mod this out by using the longer barrel if you want to, because you can get enough ergo these days, or you can just keep it as the nice short one, which is probably what I would do, to be honest. I think that's probably one of the disadvantages with the NLs, is that they all have the long barrel. There's nothing you can do about that. You can't change it. But this guy, you can use a nice short barrel on it. It does mean that you don't have that many options for handguards and stuff, but that's fine. And the recoil is actually kind of okay. So once you've put on like a vertical foregrip or something and changed over the stock to something else, then you're probably in a pretty good position. A rogue choice, which is actually another video that I've done recently as well, a lot of these guns are kind of coming back up, is the RPD, which I don't think is too bad. It's the same caliber, but you get a really big magazine, which is actually quite important for Icebreaker, but it has 700 RPM. This is one of the other things that you do want, is to have a nice big mag. Now I've chosen mostly guns that have this, so the NLs can get that because you can get the really massive magazine. I actually probably should have said this before, because on this guy, on the GP version, sorry, on the DI version, we go into edit build and have a look. You can't get the regular box mags for these, but you can get this, the RPK-16 drum, and this is minus 12 ergo now, so you might need to lean a bit more into ergonomics, but I think it's actually well worth taking one really big mag, because sometimes you're fighting 6 Black Division at the same time, and it is actually a bit chaotic. So the RPD is really good for that, because it has 100 rounders by default, and now that the overswing mechanism is gone, it doesn't matter if you're bringing a really heavy gun, and that actually gives you the fastest fire rate within 762x39, which is really handy. A kind of rogue choice would be anything within the 9x39 caliber. Now, I don't know whether this is necessarily that great, because these things do burn out quite quickly with overheating and stuff, just because of the way that they work. But they do have some of the fastest fire rates for ammo that really does punch way above what you would think. And so it could potentially be an option. I mean, I know some people have been clearing AI with this. I would sort of avoid it because of the 30 round magazine max. But again, if you've got loads of like SP6 or you've got BP for 9x39, then potentially either the VSS, the AS Val, or the SR3M, or the Mod 4 as well, the Val Mod 4. Any of those will actually work, but I would just beware of the 30 round magazine, that's all. Alright, so onto ammo. So firstly, make sure that your weapons are actually repaired, by the way, because especially if you're suppressed, you might be going through a lot of ammo and you may end up getting a jam, which you really don't want to have to do. I know some people have gone through and used pistols or whatever and gone to kill Knight, but the guns that you get off the AI typically aren't full dura either. So just make sure you're full on durability here. Now, I've made myself a little cheat sheet. I was looking at an analysis of which ammo was good and which ammo was bad for this, because it does actually matter for the AI. You're not fighting against PMCs, remember. So this is a PvE experience, and other than the shoreline section, you do have to be aware that you're fighting AI, bosses, bots, whatever, that don't act like normal players. So here is the broad spectrum of the AI that you're going to face. So you've got rogues, which are, they're around sort of the first section of the map, and they have regular 35 head HP, just like a PMC does. They have much higher thorax at 180, and the total health is 775. So you want to shoot these guys in the head. I mean, that's pretty much the case for all of them, but with these guys especially. Then you've got Black Division. These guys have the 40 head HP, and this is one of the things that kind of makes SMGs not that good against some of the higher tier AI, because a lot of ammo like SS190 or MP7, FMJ, that kind of thing, won't actually go through 40 head HP through a class 4 helmet, even if it pens. This is kind of a problem sometimes for 35 health, even on PMCs, but 40 opens out a lot more extra ammo, so you do have to be a bit careful about. So they've got actually slightly less thorax HP than the rogues, which is kind of makes up for their head, I guess. And then they're sort of 790 overall, which is about the same. But it's the head really that matters. Then you've got Mr. Wedge himself, which is one of the bosses. You don't need to fight him. He's like partway through the map. You can actually extract before you find him. But to fight against him, it's really important to know that he has 70 head HP instead. So you're going to have to shoot him twice with basically anything that isn't 762x51 or more. So if we look through these from class 4, and 556 to start with. This is the pen chance here that I've got there in this column, and we've got the damage in this column. So if you're taking 5.6A1, which I wouldn't recommend, you've only got a 65% pen chance to get through. You really do need to kill these guys quite quickly, and the damage is 38. So even if you pen, you won't actually kill Black Division in one shot to the head, which is going to be a right pain. M85501, on the other hand, is going to have a 94% pen chance, which is much better, and the damage of 41. So it is close. You do have to be pretty close to them, because you've got to remember also there's damage drop-off and pen drop-off in EFT. So if you're far away, you could get a small pen drop-off, which also contributes towards the damage drop off too. So the damage itself drops off, and then the damage that you do depends on the pen if it's going through a helmet, and if the pen drops off, the damage also drops off. So it's kind of like doubly bad. You could quite easily slip below this 40 threshold if you're too far away. M995 is slightly better for this because although it has lower damage to start with, it doesn't decrease through a class 4 helmet because the pen is too high, so it ends up being 42 to begin with and a 97%. So M995 is technically slightly better for this, although this is really hard to come by. You can craft this stuff in the workbench if you've done your car needs a service, whereas M995 you're basically going to be picking up off Black Division mostly, I would imagine, but maybe it's worth bringing in a little bit. Now 545 BT is kind of the same as 5.6A1. You don't really want to be using this because of the 55% pen chance, and again, it won't go through the Black Division heads, whereas 7M40 will. Now, 7M40 is great because you get lower recoil to start with, and also you get slightly higher damage. So this is decent pen chance through class 4, and good enough damage so that you can be stood a little bit further away, and it'll still go through anyway because there's enough leeway there. BP is actually kind of touch and go for the same reason as M855A1. Although the pen chance is really, really nice, 41 is like super, super close. And then BS, because of the penetration on that and the slightly higher damage again versus 556, you end up with 45 through the head, which is really, really good. This means that you're also going to be two-shotting wedge no problem. Pretty much all of these ammos will, to be honest. But you'll go through Black Division fine. So 545 actually is looking pretty strong. The big downside, obviously, to this is that there isn't any of this in raid. Whereas this, there is actually loads of it. So logistically, it depends on which you want to do and how much ammo you've got. Now, I've been using 300 Blackout, as I said, so CVJ is quite nice because it's got 94% pen chance through class 4, and it does 48, so this is loads. You've got tons of leeway. CVJ's extra damage really helps here, and AP is actually kind of unnecessary. The CVJ does enough damage to get a headshot, and it doesn't really help you getting through the armor particularly. Yes, it will get through class 6, but most of the rogues are wearing class 4, and the Black Division are wearing class 5 or class 4, and as I said, most of the time, you want to be shooting these guys in the head because otherwise they're going to absolutely beam you. They're going to shoot you 5 or 6 times if you miss or show your body for too long. So CVJ is probably better, and this is okay because you can buy this directly off the traders too. There's not too much faffing around for CVJ, so this is quite nice. There's one reason why I quite like the MCX. You can just fill your mags with CVJ, not have to worry too much about it. As we move up to 7.62 by 39, PP honestly isn't that bad because of where it sits within the penetration threshold. And again, you can buy this from the traders too, so that's quite nice. So this would be going into your RPD or into your mutant. BP is obviously a little bit better, and MAI AP is the super, super rare one, but it's pretty much the same as BP for shooting at heads, so you might want to go with a little bit of BP on top and some PP underneath to stack it, because you can craft BP in the hideout, which is fine. So if you have loads of it, you can bring all of that if you want, but stacking it is perfectly okay against Black Division. We did touch on 9x39 a little bit. PAB 9 or higher is okay because of the amount of damage this stuff does. 94% chance with a 51 damage through a class 4 helmet. This is tons and going to give you no problems at all. You just got to worry about the mag capacity on these things is all, and a little bit of slow bullets, which even in short ranges can actually make a bit of difference. If it's only going at 300 meters per second, you have to lead a little bit. It does make it slightly harder to shoot, especially maybe across the engine room, which is probably the hardest part of the icebreaker. And then finally, I didn't touch on any 7.62x51 guns, but the reason why I wanted to showcase this was that if you did want to use like the MDR or the Scar H or even the AK-308, which with its 24 round mags, I'm not sure if that's necessarily amazing, but the RPM of 700 is pretty good. If you do want to use that, then M80 is fine most of the time, except against Mr. Wedge himself, because if you use M80A1, you actually will one-shot him in the head, which could be kind of handy because he's kind of a tendency to one-frame PQ. I've not actually fought against him myself yet, but I have seen lots of other people do it, and it does seem quite tough. So if you do decide to go this way, I think maybe at least keep some M80A1 for the boss fight if you do intend to go do that. Otherwise, against the regular rogues and the Black Division, M80 will be just fine. In terms of how much ammo to actually bring, I think if you're using something like the MCX or the M4, like 260s and 230s should be fine because there should be ammo around for you to be able to take. If you're using something like 545, then maybe you want to take a little bit extra compared to that. But as I said, you're going to be wanting to get headshots mostly. So if you're spraying wildly down corridors with these weapons, you're probably playing Icebreaker wrong. You want to be a little bit more targeted and a little bit more specific about how you kill these AI, because standing in the corridor and shooting is just going to get you killed, and it doesn't really matter how much ammo you've got. I think this is one reason why you might want to strongly consider using an LPVO rather than the holo, just because it does make those pixel peaks a little bit easier to fight against the AI and zoom in and actually get those headshots, which is really quite handy, because I would normally prefer to play with a holographic, but against this AI, I do also think that, yeah, like a Voodoo or a Razor or something like that is really quite valuable. Now, for the rest of the kit, The optimal headwear is clearly the Altin or the Reese T. There is actually a quest to get these unlocked, so you can do it. I've actually got it here, but I haven't done it myself yet, which is calibration, so eliminate PMCs from over 100 meters away. That gives you the purchase from Ragman, it's a barter. So the Altin is really good because a lot of the ammo, especially from the rogues, won't go through the Altin, and it'll give you a second chance, which is kind of cool. So with this armor, you'll have class 3 around the neck, you'll have class 6 at the front, and then you'll have class 5 on your head all the way around. And if you are using the Altin, then you're going to want to use one of these, the Pro Flexes. These are probably really, really expensive right now. Yeah, 250k, but I think they're well worth it because they effectively give you headset level hearing with some of these big helmets. Next best is probably the Tagilla helmet. These ones can be found on Tagilla directly. You can shoot them in the head and then just repair them because they repair really, really well. I'll show you here. So that one went from 0 up to 39. And even this one even has reduces incoming damage, which actually could be kind of handy. 4% is enough sometimes for certain types of ammo. This one you also want to be wearing with the earpiece as well, the Pro Flexes. The TEPs I don't like as much. These don't actually increase your hearing range at all. They just change the EQ a bit, whereas the Pro Flexes do actually give you more hearing than you would without it. Other than that, we obviously are going to take a lot of smoke grenades. We also want to take some other grenades with us so we can flush out the AI. You're going to be able to loot a lot of that off the Black Division and off the Rogues as well. So don't worry about bringing too many grenades, but you do want to have some just so you can get them to move around. And then in terms of the secure container and the special slots, I was bringing a green flare. You don't actually need to bring a green flare in because in the very first room underneath the toolbox, there's a green flare right there. So you need this to get out at the end with the helicopter, but you don't need to bring it in. I did just because I wasn't entirely confident whether I would find it or not. Turns out it's actually very easy to find. And you also probably want to take a Serve 12 kit in as well so you can repair your limbs up to your max HP because you want to keep as much health as you physically can. In terms of armor, I do think there is a case. I didn't actually do this myself, but there is a case to bring in the second plate. You can sometimes get the plates off of the AI that you kill and use those to swap in and out. So making sure that you're keeping an eye on like how damaged your armor is and using the stuff that you get from the AI to do it. But bringing in a second class 6 plate, if you've got loads of them, is maybe an option. If not, then maybe just use the AI one. And then in the secure container, obviously I've got Kappa here, but you want to be bringing some food and water for the shoreline section of the raid. There is food and water actually on Icebreaker, but you probably don't want to have to be like faffing around trying to find it. Make sure you're taking some long-term painkillers like the ibuprofens and a splint, and then take 2 injector cases because this is actually going to be really, really useful. One of them you want to keep completely empty. So this is my usual injector case loadout. I've got 2 Propitols, SJ6 for running fast, which is useful for shoreline if you're in an annoying place. This if you run out of food and water, because it gives you that back. Mule if you're really heavy, which you probably do want for Icebreaker because you might be really heavy. You want to bring a big bag for that. Zagustian to block out bleeds. You might actually want to bring 2 of these. And an ETG, again, you might want to bring 2 of those, but you might find some around the map too. But the empty injector case is so that you can loot because there's injectors absolutely everywhere. So you're going to definitely fill this, and this is going to come back to refill some of your money that you've spent on actually getting there in the first place. And a dog's case is probably slightly more useful than a sick case because there's not going to be any dog tags. You need 400k to get in the first place to do the transit, so make sure you bring that with you. And you need 2,000, I think it's 400 euros technically, but I'm bringing in 2.5 because it's what it said in the quest, to actually use the helicopter at the end. So that's about 400k as well. So the whole round trip is about 800k. So you do want to be making sure that you're filling your containers with injectors and everything else and getting out with some decent loot as well. Otherwise, it's going to be a little bit expensive. Insurance also doesn't work on the Icebreaker too, by the way. I may as well point that out now. So with that, you should be ready to go and take on the Icebreaker. The first part of the loop where you infill, you go through the first section, you have to kill Knight and a few of the other guys, and then you go into the engine room. That part is by far the hardest bit. And I think with the engine room, I didn't have much success with the old strategies that were being shown around, where people were using impact nades to kill them all as they came out through the door. But BSG have changed some of the AI behavior, so now sometimes they just kind of like sit in those back rooms, which is a bit awkward. So you do want to kind of trigger them somehow, and apparently moving down the right-hand side is better than going down the left, which is what I was doing, and they were just being stuck all behind the doors. But the engine room bit is the hardest part. I'm not going to do a guide for that yet because I'm not experienced enough with it to show you, but there's tons of people out there. I actually was watching one of the Tiggs guides, I think, and he has been showing clearing it solo repeatedly in a way that you can do it. Like, they're hard to fight, right? They're no joke, and they are very, very headshotty and very laser beamy. But there are ways to do it. I've seen him do it, and yeah, so go and watch one of those videos if you want to go and see how to do, you know, the boss and the AI. And BSG keep changing it, so you kind of have to keep your eye out on what happens, because a strategy that was working literally 2 days ago now doesn't work anymore because of the way BSG have changed that. So I wish you the best of luck with Icebreaker. A big shout out to all my patrons as usual, and as always, have fun in your raids.